I'll tell you a couple stories. When I was a teenager, I realized the power of story when I was in another country and I met this kid and this kid was like, hey, I have a bad family. And your show showed me that families can stick together. And I thought I never wanted a family until I saw your show.
Wow.
And your show made me realize that one day I can have a family that can stick together. And thank you for that.
Welcome to Y'all Street. Today I speak with David Henrie, the star of Disney's The Wizards of Waverly Place franchise and the director of the recent Mel Gibson film, Monster Summer. David, cup of coffee?
Tarek, I would love a cup of coffee. There's one thing I want right now. It's a cup of coffee.
Well, there you go. And I got you a special coffee mug. This is the director's coffee mug.
Oh, very good.
Now that you're a big-time director.
Oh, thank you, buddy. I appreciate it.
You know, I'm usually the guy that's always in the blazer and the shirt. I dressed down today. I was thinking, David's going to roll in, be a little bit more relaxed.
I think it's so funny. I saw one of his podcasts and I go, oh, he was wearing a blazer, he's wearing a sport jacket. I got to put on a sport jacket. So I came prepared today and we were both accommodating.
See, we're considerate. We're considerate.
Considerate people here at Y'all Street.
Wizards of Waverly Place.
Yes. That
was your show.
Yeah.
And now we're going Wizards beyond Waverly Place.
Yes.
How did that come about? I'm interested.
My so I grew up on the show Wizards of Waverly Place, right? Which was probably one of Disney Channel's most successful shows they ever had. It was I think still the only sitcom that's ever won Emmys for them. And it really launched my career and got me to a really good place. And, I was a teenager at the time. And then after that, just life changed. I had a bit of an existential crisis, a new path emerged.
Stop right there, though. So you're on this hit show.
Yeah.
On Disney.
Yeah.
What is life like for you? So you're filming, you're going out, you want to go get a cup of coffee. You're getting swarmed by teenagers, by fans of the show. What's that whole experience like? Selena Gomez is on the show. She's a rocket ship herself. What's that whole experience like?
It's looking back on it, it does feel like a different time. It literally was a different time, but this was right before streaming kind of hit the market and social media. This was right before all that. Twitter had just come out. So this was a time where Disney Channel and celebrity was much bigger and different than it is now. It was probably the last moment of a more traditional form of celebrity and actor, and especially in the context of Disney and Disney Channel. So it was at its height. Like everywhere I'd go all over the world, even still to this day, I'm meeting lots of people and lots of people are coming up taking pictures, and it's a different world. I talk about that with our current cast on the reboot that I'm producing right now and acting in. They're like, what's it going to be like when the show comes out? And I'm like, it's just different. It's a different time. Thanks be to God, it was massively successful. In fact, we set the record for Disney Channel for their highest premiere on Disney Plus ever. So it's a massive hit for them. But times are different. Kids are on YouTube. Kids are following social media influencers. They're the new celebrity. Traditional actors and celebrities. It's just different. So yeah, the kids on our new show, they're definitely going to get recognized places, and they're definitely going to have their moment. But it's not like it was then. Then it was just a different time.
Yeah, you notice the level of accessibility to people is totally different than it was back in like the 90s, early 2000s, where it was all like Us Weekly or People Magazine, or they would have shows on television just dedicated to tracking what celebrities were doing. But
yes,
yeah, I mean it's interesting to me how now you're kind of on the other side of that celebrity, coaching some of the younger up and comers. And what are you telling them? Do you give them any advice on how to handle it or things to think about? Like what are those conversations like?
We talk about it a lot. So this new show, basically, I'm the dad. I have a wife. We have children. We love our family, and I was partially responsible with casting the next generation of kid actors who are going to come up to be the next big things, right? And I tell them a lot of lessons I wish that I learned when I was their age. For instance, right now we're in between season 1, season 2, right? And we're waiting on a season 2 order. And for an actor, that's a big deal. That's like, I'm trying to think of a comparison in another business sector, but it's you don't necessarily know you're getting a second season. So every season you make a show, you don't know if you're getting picked up. You never really know. So you're kind of every season fighting for your life, and it might be over, And when I was younger, that was really stressful. And I thought, if my show didn't get picked up, something's wrong with me. Like I didn't do a good enough job, or I feel like a failure, So right now we're in that same moment, and I'm looking at these kids, and I'm like, I want to tell them things that I wish that I heard. So I talk to them all the time about where value and identity and what's important. So I tell the kids, like, hey, if you're feeling stressed about this, just know that this is not where your value resides based on a season 2, based on approval from others. And if you are feeling stressed about this, then let that be pause for reflection, because you need to think about what is really important to me. And ultimately, that comes from your relationship with God. And, for me personally, that's exactly where it comes from. I know no matter what, if something comes, something goes, that doesn't bother me anymore, because I go, you know what? As long as my relationship with him is okay and I'm there, I'm secure. And
you use that word identity, which I think is such a powerful word. And when you're young, you're a child, and you go through sort of the traditional elementary school and high school, struggling with your identity is, what everybody goes through. You're going through puberty. Who am I? What do I value? What do I like? What do I dislike? When you're a child actor and you grow up on set and you are famous in the public eye from a very early age, a lot of that identity is in some ways sort of taken from you and imposed upon you from the outside in. And I'm curious, did you experience that as you were kind of coming up as a child actor? And maybe you can talk a little bit about, I think, sort of the stigmas of being a child actor in Hollywood and the challenges, because a lot of them end up on drugs and kind of go through some really difficult times.
Totally. Yeah, as an actor especially, your job is to be something you're not. So when you're trying to find your identity and build some foundation by which you can stand on, it's kind of at direct conflict with what you're doing. So doing that as a teenager, as a young person, it's tough. There's a lot of turmoil there. And your business is inherently built, as an actor at least, is inherently built on approval of others and what other people think. So your self-esteem, it's just the nature of the beast, is based on what other people think. And like your identity is only worth something if other people are going, good job, you're getting the job. Yes, you got the second season, all of that.
It reminds me of that, IMDb, when you go and you see the star meter.
Yes.
Is the star meter going up or is it going down? And
that's where you're at in your life. That's where you're at in your career.
Being concerned about how you're valued in the overall system.
Yeah. I was there as a kid actor. If it wasn't a better score, I was like, oh no, my career is failing. It's like, no, like I try to tell the kids and I try to tell the parents on our show and any other kids that I meet all over the world, like your value will never be linked to other people's eyes. It has to be based on something more internal. You need to find a confidence in yourself that's independent of what other people think.
So how did you get into acting? And when did you start?
I was young, and my parents probably gave me the best shot possible at having like a healthy upbringing. That didn't involve later turning to drugs or turning to substance abuse issues or any of that, because my parents treated me like you treat a kid in a sport. They were very supportive. They didn't need me. They didn't need my money. They didn't need any of that. It was
weren't living vicariously through you.
No, in fact, it was almost the opposite. My dad would be like, second you're done with this thing, we're out of LA, dude. I want to get back to Arizona and like back to normal life. Like the second you're done, let's get out of here.
That is very much your dad.
Very my dad. So I tell that to a lot of parents too, as I go, hey, like if you're like quitting your job, if you're like changing your life, if you're sacrificing this much for your kid, be very cautious of that, because that could create an undue pressure on a child where his psychology, what he's built for, is not to be in these high pressure, high stakes situations. Kids are meant to be wild and free and learning through nature, learning through interaction. They're not meant to be with lawyers and agents and managers and under the spotlight and all these things. So it's like, if your kid doesn't like it like a sport, which is how I liked it, like theater, it was fun for me. Like I loved performing. Then you got to question your motives. So I'm always cautioning parents, like, you shouldn't take any of your kid's money. And if you need to, that's going to create a big problem because that kid's going to get older. He's going to want to know where it went. It's an awkward dynamic.
And how common is that?
Very common. Very common. Yeah, a lot of these families are leaving a situation or breaking a situation to get to LA. They need the kid to work. The kid's paying for the apartment. And
that's tough.
The mom's going, we need this, like.
And now you're the breadwinner.
And now you're
9.
the breadwinner. You're a kid. That's a very terrible dynamic. Of course, kids are going to end up on drugs later in life. They had no childhood.
Yeah.
They had this terribly pressure-filled situation that can only express itself in substance abuse later on or some sort of abuse later on. The kid was stunted, literally. Like, I met so many actors in their 40s. I'm like, you're still kids inside. Like, you never grew up. So I was fortunate enough to have that proper parental dynamic where I always felt like my dad's kid and my mom. I was never the breadwinner. So I tell parents that all the time. It's like, if you want to get your kid into acting, like, you stay the parent. Now, this is a sport.
The dynamic on Wizards, it seemed like the cast was super close. Did you find in that support structure, a lot of help in kind of navigating through the celebrity of being on that show?
Yes. And all of us, we did feel like family. And I think a lot of the people on set did a good job of making us feel like kids while we were acting. Because it's a fine line. On one hand, you need to make your day. Like, there's a certain professionalism you have to have because lots of money is being spent and you need to get what you need to get. But on the other hand, they are kids. We are young people and they need to be treated a certain way. So let them laugh a little bit, let them have fun, let them goof off for a couple seconds. Like, it's a fine line with your producers and directors and people who are on set working with children.
Sure.
And they actually did a great job with that. And we had a familial culture. And I was the oldest on the show. And I really embraced that role of like big brother. And I came from a big Italian family. So to me, I was always like just trying to put everyone under my wings and, have that familial atmosphere. And I think we had that. And it was part of the reason the show was such a success.
Justin, what are you doing still up? It's late.
I stayed up because I owe you something. I found it in Washington Square Park. A two-headed dog had it. Pretty sure he didn't start out that way.
Thank you. What about your wand?
Find a spell to fix it. And I owe you something else. Thank you for saving me.
And that, in some ways, has actually led to this reboot, right? Your relationship with Selena has been tight over the years. And
Yep.
I imagine as, her rocket ship has exploded, that having you as a friend and just a sounding board has probably helped. And
Oh, yeah.
How did the second show come to be? Because I know she's involved with that.
Yeah. Honestly, it was exactly what you said. Like, she lived right next to me in California. And, my wife and I were just the couple that needed nothing from her. She's such a successful person. She's like the most followed woman in the world. Everyone wants something from her. Mm-hmm. And her and I have so much history. And, she was at my wedding and she's been, Aunt Selena to my daughter. Like, she just knows that with us, like, there's no angle, there's no any of that. Like, never asked her for a thing. So we would just be sitting around having dinner and we loved the show. So we'd be pulling up episodes, drinking wine, joking about where our characters would be. And at a certain point, after years of this, I was like, I got my second and third kid on the way. So I forget if it was second or third, but like, I was like, I'm way older. We're way older. Like, I think we got a show, Selena. We keep talking about this. Like, I think we got something. And she was like, yes, my character's here, your character's there. Like, let's put it together. And so we just started having some meetings and it took a couple of years of development, but yeah, it just came about completely naturally.
So walk through the mechanics of that. So now you have an idea. You guys are super excited about it. You're revisiting, the original universe that you kind of grew up in. And then what? So you ring somebody at Disney and say, hey, we want to sit down and pitch an idea. How does that all come about?
Yeah. So it's a development process before a production process, and the development process is usually a very long time. But it starts with a phone call. It starts with calling up an executive, an old friend of mine, a guy named Gary Marsh, incredibly talented. They should build a statue of him at Disney. He's made so many people's careers, from Hannah Montana to Selena. He greenlit the original show. You name it, just a litany of shows. So he was still at the network at the time. And I just called him and said, hey, Gary, I got an idea. What do you think? And he said, let's set up a time. I'd love to hear more about it. So we formalized a pitch, which took months of work. We walked in there and we pitched it, and it wasn't right for them at the time. They said, you know what, we love it, but let's keep in touch. Time's not right for something like this. So 2 years went by where, you work so hard as a producer, as someone in development in Hollywood, now being on the other side of the camera. And I know we're gonna talk more about that, but there's so much time spent on developing things that go nowhere. And you're not being paid for it. It's just time that you believe in a future vision and a future concept. And so years went by. Literally, we pitched it. We spent a lot of time working on it, months working on it. They say, you know what, time's not right. A year later, I check back in. No, time's still not right. And then I see Gary has a big change. He finished his career at Disney. I think he was there for decades, and he's now producing with them. And another year went by, and I called Gary and I said, hey, I know you're not with the channel anymore, but I know you got friends there. Do you think the time's good now? And he goes, actually, I was just in a meeting, and yeah, I think the time could be good. Let's go back in there.
Interesting.
So we go back in, pitch, and they go, yes, the time's right. Let's go into development. Let's find writers. So then you find writers, and the writers have to write a pilot. So it's still not like you're green lit, you're going.
Now, were these the same writers that were working on the original show, or just completely different?
Completely different. One of the things that Disney made clear that they wanted early on was a whole new audience, but at the same time, a big warm hug to the original show. So the writers that we found, they grew up on watching the show with their kids. So they were huge fans of the original show. So they knew the original show very well, and their kids loved the original show. So they were like the perfect guys to create something completely new, but at the same time, give a big warm hug to that original fan who's going to be coming back, watching for nostalgic purposes.
Sure.
So we work with them. We develop an idea for a pilot. They write the pilot. The pilot goes through iterations. So that's a 6-month process. The writer's strike happens.
Oh, boy.
We're sitting waiting for another 6 months, not knowing what's going on. At that point, we had just casted our lead girl, and then everything paused. Everything stopped.
And the writer's strike was when? Right around what time?
That was summer of 2023, 2022,
Okay.
Something like that.
It's interesting because Hollywood had these like back-to-back big blows between COVID and the writer's strike, and it was starts and stops, et cetera.
That was a terrible time in the industry. So many friends just like outright quit. The industry's already shrinking, and then these two big blows just it was awful. So we pause on that. That finishes. We re-engage, a few more months now developing. Then you get the green light for the series, right? So then you greenlit the series. You're shooting X amount of episodes. I think it was 10 or 11. And you got to prove yourself there. And then you get what's called the back 9 if you do a good job, which we did. So it's a lot. I went into a little more detail than normal just to show you that this Hollywood process is a lot. It's very involved. There's lots of people voting along the way. So it's a lot more than just, I'm going to go make a show, and I got a great idea, and I'm making the show, and life is good. It's like you're pulling your hair out every step of the way, trying to keep everyone on board and rowing in the right direction, because there's like hundreds of people working on this at all times. And a lot of these people have very important opinions.
So in the first go-round, you actually were not just acting, you started getting into the writing of some of the episodes with Wizards. So I'm curious how that came about, and then I'm curious about what has changed with this iteration. Are you more actively involved in the production aspects and the management of the episodes?
Yeah, for me, I always wanted to do more than just act. I always wanted to understand how the sausage was made, for lack of better words. When I was on set as a kid actor, I'd always be asking questions like, why is the camera there? And what lens is that?
Why is that, do you think? What is that curiosity?
I just wanted to know, like, why is the camera there and not there? And why is that one there? Oh, you have to establish, your geography so that way these cuts work. And and if you put it there, you jump the line and it disorients the audience. Oh, interesting. Okay, that's how it works. Like, I was always picking up a camera and shooting things and making things. It was just it was natural to me. I don't think it was a intellectual decision. I was just very curious. I wanted to know more, and I would watch people make decisions that made impact. The guys in the nice chairs would come over and they'd make a suggestion, and I'd see that work, and I'd be like, "Oh, that's cool. What do they do? Oh, they're producers. Wow. And they're guiding the story. Oh, cool. Like that's really interesting." Like, so I'd always be very curious about how things worked. And I was talking with Mel Gibson about this when I first met him, and he said, yeah, his film school was him as an actor. Was exactly that same discussion we were just having. He learned how to become a director by acting a lot and understanding how things are done, asking questions, being curious.
And so now on this iteration of Wizards, are you writing, directing, producing? Where do you play?
Yeah, so I'm executive producing, which the job of the executive producer is a high up position where you're overseeing pretty much everything going on set. And there's several executive producers who have very similar jobs, but articulate that job a little differently. So, for me, being one of the people that kind of put this together in the first place, I'm looking out for the heart. I'm looking out for the humor. I'm looking out just for the macro level themes that I think made the original show special. And I'm trying to be a guardian of that, for lack of better words, throughout this new series. So that's like really, really important for me, is making sure that there's these wonderful familial themes and values. It's like the Robinsons always stick together, right? It's this classic message, but we're the Russos. The Russos always stick together. So it's this, I think the show is a great vehicle for family values, and a way that, I'll tell you a couple stories. When I was a teenager, I realized the power of story when I was in another country and I met this kid, and this kid was like, "Hey, I have a bad family, and your show showed me that families can stick together, and I thought I never wanted a family until I saw your show."
Wow.
And your show made me realize that one day I can have a family that can stick together, and thank you for that. And I was like, whoa, I didn't even think of that. And I have countless stories like this, including stories of like kids who were suicidal, who needed a laugh, like desperately in a moment needed a laugh, and our show was there for them and like took them off of a very dark path. So this stuff really matters to me, the power of storytelling, the power of art to pierce the soul in a way that no intellectual exercise can. And you might look at a sitcom or a funny show and just be like, oh, it's just something I'll have a beer to or whatever. But you don't realize what effect that's having on you. You don't realize how powerful and profound of an experience you're having.
Disney in particular has always played a pretty big role in childhood entertainment, and the morals and the values and some of the themes that you're talking about have been synonymous with the name Disney. Recently, Disney has come under fire in the news because, and I was actually just looking at a headline today. It says Disney Snow White opens with a lackluster $43 million amid controversies and poor reviews. And so I'm interested, as kind of a Disney insider, as somebody that's been heavily involved with Disney his whole entire career. What is your perspective on what is happening, what's working, what's not working?
Yeah, I think our whole industry, Disney plays a part in this, but I think the whole industry is in this kind of existential crisis, and I think has been since streaming really came to the forefront, where you have different ways to consume media. Traditional revenue streams have completely dropped off. You no longer have the DVD. The DVD used to be a massive part of the revenue stream. Like if you're looking at a pie chart where theatrical revenue comes in, DVD, and then ancillary revenues after that, DVD was a massive part of that equation, right?
Or VHS. When I was in school, I mean, you'd walk into a dorm room and it'd just be a wall of VHS.
VHS is like you're buying the product twice or three times. I mean, you get 3 bites at the apple if you're a studio. That's really important revenue for you, right? So that suddenly falls off, and you have streamers come up and they say to the filmmaker who's been worried about premiering at a box office for decades because they sink or swim based on that opening week. best or worst weekend of their life based on how the box office performed. They're like, oh, great. And you're giving me enough money to make my film big and beautiful? Great. Like people ate that deal up, right? And then on top of that, you have the economic issues where you have movies that are so expensive, effects that are so expensive to where you got to make $1 billion in the box office in order to make back your money, or $500 million to make back your money. And P&A costs added on top of that just compounds the issue. So I think there's many business reasons why big movies are having a tough time right now. But one of my core values, Disney aside, one of my core values as a content creator and as a filmmaker is to make movies with timeless themes and values. And I think you see the box office rewarding movies with very timeless themes and values along the way. So for me, that is what I'm really focused on. It's what we're focused on with our new company, because I am mission driven in a sense of, I just got back from a trip from Italy, so I'm all nostalgic over that trip, and I am Italian, so I've grown up with the power of art and the power that art can have on a mind, on a culture, and what it represents to our culture. I think it was Aristotle who said, if you give me law, politics, or art, he'd take art all day long, because art shapes souls and shapes minds. So for me, I get excited about making stories that have wonderful family values and just timeless values that can apply to all peoples in all places and all times. And I think the more you're seeing a lot more of that being made the past few years, and I think the box office is rewarding it. And
yeah, I can think of a few like Angel Studios and Kingdom Pictures. A lot of the films that they're coming out with are being very successful. They're not huge budgets, but they're speaking to a demographic of people who want high quality entertainment without a lot of the morally objectionable kind of inserts.
As a parent,
as it were.
You're taking, like, as a parent, like at least me with my 3 kids, when I go take them to a movie, this is not a teaching moment.
Right.
This is a moment of fun. Like, we're going to the movies. The kids get excited. They get popcorn. They get to watch something. I'm not trying to have a conversation with them on the car ride back about something some foreign concept that's introduced to them that I've never talked to them about.
We've all been sitting on the couch we got grandma, we got our sister, we got our mom, and we're watching a movie on Thanksgiving, and a scene will come on that is very objectionable, and you're thinking, I would rather be anywhere in the world right now than this sofa between my mom and my grandma while this is going on.
I'm sweating thinking about it.
And I've always really struggled with what is the motivation to throw these like gratuitous scenes in there that don't add any value, and all it does is it marginalizes the audience that's there just to be entertained.
And I think you brought up Angel Studios and Kingdom. I think it's the collective frustration over the scene you just proposed that's been building up for decades. That is the reason why these companies are succeeding, and companies like ours are able to finally make high quality content right now and get it out there. Because I think people are very frustrated with having gratuitous scenes in content they want to watch with their families, and they're done with it. They're done with it. They're frustrated. So they get excited when they see House of David on Amazon, or they see Ordinary Angels come out, and or anything from Angel Studios. They know that they're going to go have an experience without an awkward moment or an awkward car ride home. You want to make movies that the car ride home is hopeful and optimistic and exciting. Wow, this character did this. Oh, that inspired me, like that. It's like the first time we all watched Rocky afterwards, right? You might not even be able to put it into words, but you're just walking a little taller and you're standing a little stronger.
You're looking for whatever steps you can to sprint up at
the
top.
You're ready to. You're running stairs. You're punching cows. Hanging upside down in a freezer for some reason. But you're wanting to be better. And by the way, there's a great. You should throw this clip up right now while we're doing this. But Stallone talks about this, and I forget which late night show it was, but he talks about why he made Rocky, and he said because. Well, you should just show the clip.
Well, I felt at the time that cinema, at least the movies I had been seeing, were at an all-time low. Everything was anti-society, anti-Christ, anti-government, anti-everything, and there was no one to root for. And I also feel that films are very cyclic, so I wanted to get back into the cycle of the films of the 40s and the 50s, where people say, hey, gee, I missed the good old films, yet Hollywood hasn't taken heed and hasn't made any good old-fashioned type films where morality was at the forefront.
He's saying a lot of the same talking points that I think this generation of filmmaker is saying right now too, that like we want to be reminded again of how to be optimistic and hopeful.
So we're going to talk about Reagan later, and obviously heavily involved in the tearing down of the Berlin Wall. But I think it was Sylvester Stallone and the Rocky series that brought down the fall of communism.
Oh man,
that's
100%. He punched it out. And part of the reason why I love going behind the camera is Stallone visited our set one day, and he came on set with his kids. We're big fans of our show.
Okay,
and he goes,
"This is recently."
This
or
was
on
I
the
was
previous.
I'm 35 now. I was like 20, 21.
Okay,
and he came to the original show, and I was just such a fan of his. I was like, Rocky, it's amazing. He goes, my kids don't even know Rocky is. They don't even know Rocky is. You got to tell him, David, tell him. And so I was like trying to talk up his dad, him in front of his kids. But he said, I told him I was writing for the show, and he goes, that's smart. He goes, you got to control your future. You got to control where you're going because the auditions will come and go, kid. You got to control where you're going. And then he told me a whole story. I said, nice watch. And he goes, it's a Panerai. And he told me a whole story of how he helped build Panerai.
Really?
Like he was like shooting a movie in an old wooden ship, and there was like a container, and he opened the container, and there was an old Panerai. And he goes, this watch is presents. Wow, this thing's got like, whoa, this is a beautiful watch. I got to call my friends at Cartier and see if we can do something with this watch. And he helped build like
that's wild.
Panerai to what it is today. But talk about controlling your future. But yeah, that conversation really stuck with me. He really inspired me to go, I need to control my future. And I'm in this business to want to recreate that magical feeling in audiences that I think they so desperately want these days.
So not to get too personal, but you're on this family show and you're young, you're 18, 19, 20, 21. You're now globally famous, celebrated everywhere. You've got money, you've got opportunity, the women love you. Are you in that moment thinking, man, I really want to launch a media company that's focused on family values? Or
furthest thing from it.
Okay.
Furthest thing from it. No, I was in a bit of an existential crisis. Like I had a problem. I had a lot of those things that you said, lived a very materialistically driven life. And the more stuff I got, the unhappier I was. And there was a direct correlation there. Like I remember I had a big moment where I wanted to purchase a certain thing, and I'm going to work really hard, and if I succeed one day, I can buy this thing. And I got there and I bought the thing that was like my dream thing. And I just remember going, oh man, I'm not as excited as I thought I'd be. Like, what a bummer. And it's kind of a silly story, but it was a big moment in my mind because I went, where is happiness? What I just do this forever? Like I keep buying the bigger thing? So
this reminds me of the comment you just made a moment ago about being on set and being really curious about, the camera location. I was just curious about why they did this and why they did that. And it's like, it strikes me that you sort of have this natural curiosity. And you encounter this problem. I'm not happy. I have everything that I want. Where do I find this? Where do I go?
I didn't even put that together, but yeah, totally. That's how I think. Yeah. And I didn't understand it. I thought like, I got this thing, like I really wanted this thing, and why? It's not doing it for me. Like something's wrong with me. Mm-hmm. Why aren't I happy? Like I should be happy. I have what people want to be successful. Like why aren't I happy? And it just led me on an existential crisis. I started reading different books. I was studying Buddhism. I was reading comparative mythology, and I was just nothing was really doing it for me. I was headed in the right direction because I knew I needed something philosophical. I needed something deeper than just materialism. And it set me off on the right path. And it wasn't until I got a movie called Little Boy. And in this movie, there were some really kind producers, really nice guys who I started debating philosophy with. And
this is pretty common on most movie sets?
No, this is nuts. This is nuts. I'm like, what? Where am I? This is crazy. And it was a movie called Little Boys. Kevin James, Michael Rappaport. Yep. I had a great cast, Emily Watson. And it was a dramatic film, so it was a chance for me to like show my dramatic chops. And I'm not just a funny guy, I can be serious too. And they had these philosophy nights, and I would go to these philosophy nights, and it was basically Aristotelian and Thomistic logic on the proofs for the existence of God. And
Everyone listening is like, this is not what I expected.
Yeah, no.
Most movie sets.
Yeah, no, it wasn't at all. But it was food for my soul. It was exactly what I was craving because I was so relativistic and lost and confused. I had no ground to stand on. And this finally started to give direction. And this is what inspired a change in my life. This is what led me to becoming Christian. It led me to then years later meeting my wife, starting a family. It made sense of all the natural instincts that I had growing up. I always wanted to believe in something objectively true and right, but I just lived in such a relativistic world that felt wrong, and my instincts felt stunted or incorrect.
So you're having these conversations. You're being impacted by these mentors, if you will, and where do you go from there? Because you have you're fortunate that you had this stable family life, but your parents aren't practicing Christians at this point. Your brother is another actor, not practicing Christians. Like your whole world. This is foreign to the world that you're in.
Totally.
So what happens next?
Yeah, I said I need to pursue this and I need to figure this out. I need to chase this rabbit as far as it'll go because this seemed right to me. And I remember I finished the movie, I got back home, and my family thought, I was like kind of crazy because they were like, you're wanting to make a big life change, you're going to become Christian. And my mom was very supportive. She had no issues with that. Like, she, grew up Catholic, Italian, and she had no issues with that. But it was a big change from how I behaved previously, the types of people I was hanging out with, the stuff I was doing. It was a big change. I was dating a girl at the time who didn't like that, and this change. And but I needed to pursue it because I believed it was true or could be true. And it led to change, lots of change. I was pruned. I was stripped, and it came with a lot of sacrifice. But ultimately, I stuck with it. And my dad, my brother, my mom, everyone came along slowly. We in fact were all confirmed on the same day. Like a year and a half later, we all got confirmed into the church on the same day.
Wow.
But it was a process, and thanks be to God, it was a beautiful one, but painful one.
Did you think about leaving Hollywood at this point?
Oh, for sure.
Okay.
For sure. I was like, what am I gonna do? Like I got to go do something, like become a missionary or something. But like, where do I go? I don't know how to do it. I was actually going to mass every day, and I heard the parable of the sower and the seeds and the talents as well, and just how God wants a return on what He's given you. And I think, for me at least, when I want to know God's will in my life, I look at my circumstances. I go, okay, well, first, where have I been put? Like, where am I? What am I doing? Mm-hmm. And all I knew was Hollywood. I had all these great connections and friendships and relationships.
And I'm sure these mentors actually, in some way, communicated to you that you can live out your faith even in an environment which is pretty hostile to it, right? That they were making movies in Hollywood and yet still having philosophy nights.
At the time, it certainly wasn't as cool to have any faith in Hollywood as it is now. Now I think it in a beautiful way, has much more receptivity because these movies are making a lot of money, and Hollywood is a for-profit business.
Well, the movies are making money, but you're also seeing a lot more actors come out and be more vocal about their faith. So, Mark Wahlberg and Chris Pratt and, Rob Schneider and, the list goes on. Obviously, Mel Gibson and, a lot of these guys are on Hallow app and, just communicating the importance of their faith. This is sort of a novelty. This was not very common 20 years ago, or at least the accessibility of these actors made it such that you didn't really know that this is kind of what they're going through.
At all. You're seeing a massive cultural shift, like massive, in a beautiful way. I think part of it is supply and demand, and there's such a high demand for values-based content and faith-based content, and all of us have seen it for years, and now it's finally happening. People are finally backing that. So you're seeing that, which is a really beautiful thing. And I love that guys like Chris and Mark Wahlberg and Kevin James and Mel, in a lot of ways with passion, started it. So I love that. I love that we're seeing that.
So you and your brother, determine that you're going to stay in Hollywood and you're going to do kind of your part, and you really start thinking about making this, the high quality movies, values driven, et cetera. How did that impact your career? I mean, were you having conversations with your agents at this point? Like, hey, I'm not going to be in Basic Instinct 2 or anything.
It affected my career for sure, because it gave me a lens through which I knew what I did and didn't want to do. I wouldn't take on certain roles. I turned down roles. I lost a lot of money. And when you're turning down lots of money, literally millions of dollars, people aren't happy. A lot of them were supportive and understood, and
And some of the new opportunities dry up because they're like, well, David's turning down everything, so what's the point? Let's just start looking at the next guy who will jump on it.
Right.
Your brother ran into an issue, Lorenzo.
Yes, he was going to be Al Pacino in The Offer, and there were a couple scenes that he saw in the scripts where it was like explicitly sexual, gratuitous content. Some of it he'd have to be involved in as well, and he's married, and he told his wife, like, I'll never, I'm not gonna be making out with a naked chick at any time. I promise you that. Like, I don't care how much you're acting. Like, that you're doing that.
So they made him an offer he could refuse.
They made him an offer he could refuse, and that was a big deal. He turned that down.
Neil McDonough is another actor, who is in Yellowstone and a bunch of famous movies, Band of Brothers, and he's another guy that's like,
he got fired off at Desperate Housewives because he didn't want to make out with another woman. He said, I only kiss my wife.
Admirable.
Yeah,
very admirable.
I mean, so it was the reason that we said, okay, we got to start a company. Mm-hmm. We got to, because we still have, even to this day, we have great relationships in Hollywood, and we take very seriously trying to be good to all those that we work with, and trying to be, live out our faith in the best way possible. But most of the time, it's that St. Francis quote, like, preach always, speak only when necessary. Like, to me, I'm just trying to be as faithful and hardworking as I possibly can be. And
that you're involved with. So you get behind camera with Catch, which is a short film that you made to really start, exercising your directing chops. You've recently directed Mel Gibson and Mason Thames and Monster Summer, big operation and out in theaters, and now streaming on Amazon.
Yeah, Amazon. Get it.
I'm interested to understand what that process was like and how that has really kind of set you up for Novo Inspire, which we'll talk about here in a little bit.
Yeah. For me, it was this kind of big picture vision where I just went like, I want to create a destination where families can come and know they're going to get a high quality experience that's entertaining and elevating, that will provoke a positive conversation in the car ride on the way home. So some of it will just be values-based content that's like, I don't know, the movies you grew up with, The Sound of Music's of the world, or Lord of the Rings, you name it. Just content that's, secular in appearance, but just vivified by great values. And then some faith-based content as well, that you can go and have an actual experience of your faith. And so to me, I said, man, what can I do to help serve this vision? And what talents do I have to bring to the table? So as an actor, as a director, as a producer, that's what I want to activate in order to craft this vision to have a company that's entertaining and elevating broad audiences everywhere. I didn't know the business side though, but my dad did. He had been investing in film and TV along the way as I was coming up in the business, so he understood the capital stack.
Was a producer on a lot of different films.
Producer on lots of different films and shows. So he understood the business. And my brother also has great relationships and very similar skill sets to mine. So we said, okay, let's come together. Let's put this vision together and start making content that can kind of prove out this theory of what we're wanting to do. Think back on a time to when you were younger and you were watching movies. You could walk into any movie and it would be good. You wouldn't have to go home and have an awkward conversation. My wife and I have 3 children, and the fact that we have to be forensic investigators with every piece of content that our children watch is a problem. kids are spending more time in front of their devices than they are with their parents. I mean, that shouldn't be a shocker to you. It's just the reality. So what are they watching? You might have heard it said that politics is downstream from culture. Well, culture is downstream from storytelling.
Statistically, what we've seen in the studio system is that the content that delivers the widest and the most significant box office results is G or PG-13. It's interesting that the studios, though, are spending more of their capital in producing
do in Novo, which is bring worry-free entertainment back to the front. And so that's what we've been doing the past 5 years. We produced about close to $100 million worth of content. We sold shows to Netflix, Tale Dark and Grim.
Yeah, talk about A Tale Dark and Grim, because that was an animated feature.
Yes.
So how did that come about, and what's it like working on an animated feature versus live action?
Totally. So it's like one big movie cut up into 8 episodes, and we had a great relationship. My dad actually had a good relationship with someone in the animation world named Chris Henderson, who had a relationship with an author named Adam Gidwitz, who had a best-selling book. And we loved this book. It was an incredibly beautiful book called A Tale Dark and Grim, which was grim fairy tales, but in an authentic old-school Grimm style. And that's important because kids inherently know, like, why were Grimm stories dark, right? Well, they're dark because they were representing something dark that they would then encounter one day in life. Life isn't sunshine and rainbows. And if we're raising our kids in this like safe bubble world, our kids are going to wake up one day as young adults and go, life is not what I was raised to believe. It's hard and scary. There's dragons and monsters all around me, and my boss is a dragon, and I don't know how to handle this, right? But if you tell them fairy tales, they're going to know how to slay their dragons later in life.
It reminds me, actually, we just caught a cougar on our game camera.
Nice.
So we have literally lions on the property and small children. It's like, okay, guys, we have to have a talk here.
Exactly. Life and death. This is a real world we live in, right? I mean, these things exist, and whether it's a literal cougar or a figurative cougar, you're going to face that later in life, and you got to know not to be afraid and to slay that thing, right? So that's what we loved about this book, is that this book wasn't afraid to be authentically grim, but in a way that wasn't offensive to the viewer. You know, we're not trying to scar kids. In fact, the phrase we kind of coined was scare, not scar. So it's okay to scare, but scare with purpose. You know, you scary dragon. It's scary. Yeah, you're going to face scary dragons, kids. Yeah. Like, that will happen.
Your whole entire childhood is dealing with fear.
Yes.
From the time that you're very little.
You face, as a kid, it's dualities, good, bad, heaven, hell. Dark, light, like that's what you're dealing with as a kid, and you know that. Is this person good or bad, is what kids say. They don't say, what degree of good is this person, and where do they live in the gray? And that's not how kids think. Like they're built with these things in them. So we loved this story, and we put it together, we developed it, we pooled relationships, we brought in great directors, great artists, and we pitched the town, and we sold it to Netflix, and it went on to get nominated for an Emmy. It was
so exciting.
We made a couple movies. You said Monster Summer. We got to work with Mel Gibson, who was like,
so let's Mel Gibson. Growing up for me, I mean, this guy was everybody's favorite actor. Braveheart was the college movie that was playing on a continuous loop 24/7. What was that like, meeting him? And obviously he's just a brilliant director and somebody I'm sure you learned a lot from.
Of course, yeah. I've seen all of his movies. I've studied him. And he coined the phrase that we based our company on: entertain, educate, and elevate. Okay. So that was like him saying, or he got it from someone else, but he would use that a lot. Like, if you can try to be entertaining, entertain, educate, and elevate. If you can hit the 3 E's in a piece of content, like, you're doing a good job. That's how you get a great piece of content. And he'll even say, even if you just do one right, like, you're doing a really good job.
Well, there's a fourth E: excess profits.
Yeah. That's the artists. The artists tend to drop that E from time to time. But getting to have a movie where I was going to get to go meet him and try to pitch him was like a really big deal to me. Because I'd studied all of his projects and I'd seen all of his movies, and I was nervous. But I knew fairy tales and I knew stories. And I remember seeing him as I was pulling up to the meeting. I remember seeing him in the coffee shop, and I just hit with fear, right? Felt like a little child again. Like I was hit with fear. And I literally, in my head, I go, I'm going to pull out this freaking sword. I'm going to slay this dragon. I said, I'm not backing down. It's okay to be hit with fear, but I'm not a respecter of persons. I don't care what he thinks of me. I'm just going to go in. I'm going to pitch my vision. So in my head, I literally pulled out the sword and I went in. I go, I'm going to slay this thing. And it was an amazing meeting. It was an amazing meeting. We talked for like 2.5 hours, and then he goes, so tell me about the movie, But it was just talking.
What did you talk about?
Everything.
Okay.
Life, death, theology, all of it. Family. Like we're just getting to know each other, like just shooting the breeze. And I was talking about his movies. I was talking about Passion of the Christ. I mean, I was talking about Braveheart. I mean, we talked about everything.
The underrated Apocalypto, which is a movie
yes.
that I love too.
Apocalypto. Yes, yeah, absolutely. He's telling me stories of Apocalypto, and none of those guys were actors, and because we were talking about working with kid actors, and working with kid actors a lot of times don't have that much experience. And he goes, "Oh yeah, that reminded me of Apocalypto," and none of them were actors. I had to teach them what to do, and so I got great stories there. And it's funny. There was one pivotal moment because he had no idea who I was, in terms of acting or any of that. He just thinks the director's coming to pitch him on the movie. And at one point, a bunch of girls came up. And he stood up to take a picture, and they go, "Oh no, we want David's picture." And he goes, "Who the hell are you, kid?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm an actor." He goes, "Oh, of course." He goes, "Is that how you learned how to direct?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Oh, me too. That's how I learned how to direct." It was actually a great moment where we got to. It was an opening up moment in the conversation.
Well, I mean, there's a great lesson there too, right? Because those girls were terrified to go up to you. I've been in situations with you where people are coming up and they want to get your picture, and they're really nervous and they're tentative, and they're feeling those same emotions that you felt when you went to go meet Mel. And we all have those periods of anxiety and nervousness, no matter how successful you are in entertainment or in business.
Oh yeah.
And it's a lot of our own challenges are sort of just getting out of our own way, and opening up. And some of the things that you had said earlier, I think, really resonate. That, at the end of the day, the only relationship that matters is between you and God, and then everything else is just,
If you can solidify that, the more that's like my daily thing I work on is like the more I can solidify that, the less you're respecters of persons, or you're placing people above God. And then those situations always become easier. I think I've been working on, it's okay to be hit with that kind of antecedent fear from time to time. We're human beings, we're fallen, we're not angels, we're not perfect. It's okay to be hit with that. But pushing forward through that's where your habits, your formation in life, that's where that kicks in. Hopefully you had a good dad who said to you, "I believe in you." You got what it takes to get through this.
It goes back to slaying the dragon, right? We're still dealing with some of the same childhood themes, even as we age and
100%.
Have families and
100%.
fathers and all that kind of stuff.
I think it was Einstein who said, you want a really intelligent kid, tell them fairy tales. And if you want a genius, tell them more fairy tales. Something like that. I probably butchered it, but someone in the comments will correct me. But it's true, right? Because why was he saying something like that? He was saying something like that because how we interact with objects in reality, there's so much going on that we're not even conscious of. Your brain is firing back into memories. There's a storm of things going on. And if you have those stories baked into your psychology, you're going to sense the species of difficulty or monsters or evil or whatever it is. You're going to sense that, and you've already been programmed to overcome it.
So let's go back to that theme of monsters, because now Mel's on board. He's attached to Monster Summer, filmed on Martha's Vineyard, came out last October, just in time for Halloween. I've seen it. It's an awesome movie. I love it.
Thanks, man.
Super entertaining. Reminds me of going to the movies and seeing Goonies, like very family friendly, positive themes of good and evil. What was that like to take on? That was a big budget. That was a big feature film and with A-list actors. And I guess we can kind of go back to fear. You have, I'm sure, your own reservations as a director. You're dealing with themes of good and evil in the movie.
Oh yeah.
Talk about that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I'm directing an Oscar-winning director. How do you direct an Oscar-winning director?
Yeah. No intimidation there.
Who's your star? It's like that's like being like, hey, Michelangelo, I'm going to paint this in front of you. Can you just hold still and like.
And he's also worked with a lot of fabulous directors, Richard Donner
Yes.
and others. And it's like, okay, now I'm going to be held, in comparison to these guys.
He's worked with the biggest. So like that was a really nerve-wracking experience and process for me. And that, again, exactly like pulling out the sword and slaying the dragon. It was just this thing where I was like, okay, I've been in this business for 20 years, 25 years at that time. I've been in this business. I understand this business. I've worked with bad directors. I've worked with good directors. I know what good directors look like. I know what bad directors look like. I'm going to do what I saw the good directors do. So hyper focus on preparation, come in with a game plan, know exactly know exactly how to communicate with the actors. I've been treated very poorly. I've been treated great as an actor. So I know really, I'm not afraid of actors. I know these people. These are my people. I know them. I know how they want to be talked to. And that's a lot of directors don't have that, because they grew up in film school working with not trained or not professional actors. They don't know how to talk to a real actor. They haven't had that interaction before. And so that was something I was like, okay, those are my strengths, and then hire my weaknesses. So I got an incredible DP. The technical side of directing, I wasn't as proficient on as kids who probably came up in film school. But I also knew that if I hired the right team, I didn't need to be, because there's lots of very famous directors who couldn't care less about the camera. They let the DP set up the camera. They go, just put that where you want. I'm going to work with the actors.
So the lessons for some of our younger listeners from just a leadership standpoint: treat people the right way, be humble, listen and learn, hire smart people around you to help support you, and not feel like it's a competition, but build the
hire
best.
your weakness.
Yeah, build the best team that you can. And I think there, something else I'll call. I saw a post that you did on LinkedIn, sort of almost like a love letter to the crew for Wizards Beyond Waverly Place, and the crew in the comments. It's like, thank you so much, David. We just loved working with you. And it's just it made me think about some of the best leaders that I've been around are just they're people that galvanize teams and bring people together, and I sense that you have that, and that's got to be one of the best qualities of a director, is just bringing all of these disparate views and emotions, and actors who can be divas to technical guys who want to be right on schedule all the time, and it's like playing an instrument with a lot of different keys.
Totally, and it's the servant leadership model. Like an old mentor of mine, this guy named Dennis Gallagher, is big CEO, 13,000 employees. And he'd very simply say, if I serve my people serve the company. And if I serve my people, the people serve the customer serves the company. Simple as that. I serve my people, they serve the customer serves the company. And in filmmaking, it's very similar. Like as a director, I take very seriously serving my crew. Because if they see that I care about them that much, and that I'm going out of the way to, how's your family, how are you, and patting people on the back, and just, we're all in this. It's just a movie, guys. Like at the end of the day, I know we're all killing ourselves here, but it's a movie. Let's enjoy this. We're privileged. Let's have a really good time, and little extra gestures, getting a coffee cart, getting a masseuse on set to take care of a couple people I saw stressed out, stuff like this. You throw some things in there that really makes a huge difference. And then the crew believes in you. And then they work harder, because they're not working with an a-hole. They're working with a guy that they like. I take that very seriously, because I genuinely do care. Like each and every day, I'm like, I love these people, and it's my job today to try to do what I need to do professionally, but also they're human beings, and everyone's dignity deserves to be recognized and treated in a certain way on set. They're human beings. They're not robots that we're just punching into shape here. And that's what crews hate. Crews hate when they're treated. I've been treated like a piece of meat, like a robot. Like my dignity has not been recognized as a human being. We're not animals, we're human beings.
It goes back to the family values that are so pervasive in the stories that you're telling.
And I make
living that out.
And I make a conscious effort on every set that I'm on to bring my wife, to bring my children. When the day is done, they're right there, and people are like, "Oh, the kids running around." Like, oh. I'm like, yeah, my family's here. Like, this is a big family here, and they love that. They love that. The amount of people who have come up to me after shoots and have been like, I can't tell you how refreshing it was to see your family on set, because we forget our. It's easy to forget your priorities when you're just busting your butt to make the day. When you shoot a movie, for everyone who hasn't shot a movie, there's like 200 to 300 people every single day going at a moment. All of them are working under department heads who are trying to tweak a thing and get something right. Like, it is a small war going on, and the amount of capital expense that's being spent on every day, every second is accountable. I mean, you have days where you'll spend $1 million in a day, and in that day, you have to shoot 6 minutes that will be used in the film. So every minute you're shooting is worth a lot of money.
There's stress,
And so
emotions.
you got the 300 people
responsibility.
going, I can't screw this up. Oh, I didn't put the thing up on the light tight enough. Oh no, it fell. Oh, that cost us 10 minutes. The department head comes down on him. That guy is either fired or he's chewed out in front of everyone else.
Gosh.
It's a culture that kicks your butt.
Has fatherhood helped you? Marriage helped you in learning how to be a leader and a director? And
Tremendously.
in what ways?
Patience. Patience. When you have kids, especially kids close in age, we have 6, 4, and 2, and they're little monkeys. They're at each other's throats all the time.
Totally.
And they're not reasonable, rational beings, and so they're like heat-seeking missiles for your greatest fault. And they will find it. A 2-year-old will find your fault better than an adult can after a 4-hour conversation because
Totally.
they press every button. And I got a response on this one. I'm gonna keep hitting that one until I find the crack, and then I'm just gonna go in.
Yep.
And they do that, and so it's a sanctifying thing. It's great because at the end of the day, you're sitting there talking to your wife, going, "Man, a 2-year-old just wrecked me today." Why is that? Well, I need to work on patience, And when they do that, the next time I got to work on patience. So they help. If you're used to being yelled at by kids all day long, and then you go on a movie set, you can take it. You can be patient, and you're dealing with big babies a lot of the times. You can.
I was going to say,
you can take it.
Who's more mature, your 6-year-old or some of the actors that you direct?
Yeah.
No comment.
Yeah. No comment. But that servant culture, it really works. It really works. When you got to mean it though. You can't be disingenuous. Like, you got to genuinely care for your people and protect your people and take responsibility. Like, I love that Extreme Ownership book. You got to take responsibility. Don't ever throw someone under the bus, especially if you're in charge. Like, you never, if someone else screwed up right behind me and then the executive comes and they're calling out the mistake, I'm going to go, hey, I this was under my watch and everything. I messed up, and we're going to take care of it though. Okay. I hear what you're saying. My apology. We're going to take care of it. And then you go talk to that person.
This discussion on leadership is actually a great segue into the new company. So, directing, producing a film is like sort of creating your own micro company in a sense, right? There's a big budget, there are employees,
It's its own
there's
startup.
a marketing campaign that's associated with it, there's profit and loss. I mean, there's so much there that is, lessons there that can be taken to running your own bigger business. And I know that you have a vision there with Novo Pictures. I'd love to hear about it.
So we wanted to form a company that can operate on more scale and volume. We hit this inflection point. We looked back and we said, wow, we've produced a ton of content. We've had success. We've had failure. We've learned, and we think we know what we need to do moving forward in order to operate on more scale and volume. And so for us, it was about really building this mission to entertain and elevate the broader culture because, we love this book, The User Method, which it talks all about how different individuals created products for things that they needed in their own personal life. And for me as a family man, and my brother as a family man, and my father, we just weren't seeing the kind of content that we wanted for our kids and for our families. And we looked at our lives and said, we have the skill set to do this.
Yeah, it's pretty rare actually to have, these A-list actors with the background that you have, the access to Hollywood, the access to deal flow, the connections that you have made, who are now taking that whole toolkit and applying it to something that is family oriented. There are a lot of kind of faith-based filmmakers, and there are a lot of guys doing kind of one-off projects here and there, but it's pretty rare to have what you have and the capabilities that you have with the organization to kind of do what you want to do.
No, totally. Especially if you want to make things in the more Chesterton, Tolkien, Lewis kind of fashion, which is content that really appeals to the broader culture, not just to a specific box of like faith-based movies, which is fine. We have some of those as well, but we want to make things that can really reach the broader audience. Because again, to really affect culture, to really touch hearts and minds, you need to make things that appeal to a broader demographic of people who don't share that same faith.
Yeah.
One of my buddies, who actually came to the faith not too long ago, credited it all to Lord of the Rings.
Interesting.
Had no idea that the guy behind Lord of the Rings was a believer, but he experienced an ethos in that world that just made so much sense to him and rang so true.
Again, it goes back to the themes of good and evil. It's
Yes.
just palpable in that.
Someone who spoke well theologically, perfect. It checked it. It perfectly made sense to him because he loved Lord of the Rings. So the world out there needs feeding, and there's a lot of lost sheep, and the types of content that we make can really reach a lot of them. I find so many people are so invested in affecting culture in ways that I don't think are as effective. They get involved in politics or law, which is very important, like really, really important. Don't get me wrong, really important. But getting involved in art, that has a way to shape culture. Again, I just got back from Italy, and I got to see all of these wonderful legacies of these very prolific men who gave their fortunes to leaving behind. They would start building a cathedral. They would be dead, their kids would be dead, their grandkids would be dead by the time it would be finished, but they did it anyway. They wrote the check anyway, because they believed how important art was and how important beauty was to a culture. And these are establishments that literally created culture and created all of Western civilization for that matter. They understood the power of beauty and the power of art to affect hearts and minds. And so for us, we wanted to make Novo Inspire Group because we wanted a fund where people like us who wanted content that can affect hearts and minds in a very deep way, finally had a vehicle by which they could do it and do it at a high excellence, a high quality bar with the top level talent, top stories, and actually get it out there in a broad way that can affect millions of people. We've been doing it already on the content that we've made, and now we're going to be able to do it in a more scalable way. With a fund.
Yeah, you and I have spoken a lot about the fund. Full disclosure, I'm an investor through my family foundation. And what really inspired me was growing up. I grew up somewhat of a latchkey kid, 80s and 90s, grew up watching a lot of television, grew up watching a lot of movies, and to this day still feel the scars and sort of the poison of a lot of that content that I ingested in my youth, because so much of it was bad, so much of it was immoral. And now that I'm a father and I have small children, and I've had the blessing of some financial success, my wife and I have asked the questions to each other, like, how do we want to give back? In what form do we want to give back? Because there are a lot of different ways. Some people will donate money to political causes. Some people will donate to the church. And we do both of those things, and that's important and impactful. But we've always wanted to try to help shape the entertainment world and try to pivot it away from what we feel is this declining morality into something that's much more uplifting. But the one unique thing about entertainment is, I'll use a business expression, there's no access to deal flow, right? There's no shortage of political campaigns you can donate to or churches around the corner, but when it comes to investing in a film project, it's like, how do you even get access to it? That was the first challenge. But, the second challenge is, there's a stigma about investing in films. And the stigma is it's a great way to lose money. And what I think is pretty common in the industry is there's a one-off project, there's a single film, you go ahead and you're essentially rolling the dice. It's like investing in a pink sheet in the stock market, and it may make you a bunch of money or you may lose everything. What really clicked for me on kind of the fund approach, and to take a pool of capital, invest in 10 different projects instead of one project, it reminded me of when I cut my teeth in Silicon Valley with Texas Instruments, and I would call on a lot of VCs and a lot of their startup companies, as it were. And it's power law distribution, where you can be wrong 60% of the time and still make an absolute killing, because some of the projects are going to break even, some of them are going to lose money, and there's going to be a handful that are just moonshots. And that's how you make your money. And it reminds me a lot also too of technical trading, because in my business we do a lot of technical trading, and it's like, yeah, we can be wrong 60% of the time and still make a 30% return, because you just got to mitigate the losses on the losers and make sure that the winners really run. And so I know in speaking with you that you have sort of a multi-pronged approach. There are projects that you're developing, projects that you're flipping, some scripts that you're writing. Like talk to us about that a little bit.
Absolutely, yeah. So power law distribution, absolutely. Like we look at ourselves kind of we're Texas, right? Y'all Street here, so we're kind of wildcatting. And you don't send someone out to just drill once and try to find some oil. You send someone out and he's drilling all over God's earth out there trying to find something, right? So for us, or similar to VC investing, for us, we really do invest in as many projects that fit our content guidelines, that meet the mission that we're after, essentially, but that we think have real upside. So there will be singles, there'll be doubles, there'll be losses, but we hope that the ones that hit, if you're investing in 10 projects, we hope that one or two that hit really run. And that's how if you look at Hollywood, that's really how they succeed, is they have the capital to be able to make enough projects where they get a couple hits, and that kind of carries everything else. And then in the long term, you start to build library value. Those things are relicensed and relicensed and relicensed, and every few years you relicense, so you get another pop. So for us, it is really important to have diversity of genre. So we're not just in any one genre. So we have faith-based, we have adventure, we have action, we have shows, we have movies. Some are longer term plays, some are shorter term flips. So there's different investment categories that we have there.
Some have merchandising opportunities, some don't.
Yeah, I'll give a couple practical examples just so people can understand. So on the TV side, one of the first things that we brought into the fund is a television show called Halo Heroes. And this is essentially, again, the user method. My brother and I were just lamenting over the fact that we have nothing good to show our kids. And we had just made this animated show for Netflix that got nominated for an Emmy. And my brother and I looked at ourselves in the mirror and we went, we're the guys. Like, we got to do this. We just did this. Like, we got to do this. And our kids were watching Wildcrats, which is, for if you got kids out there or grandkids, it is like everything to kids these days. Like, it is a show where essentially you have two brothers, live action. They're in real life. They go see an animal, and then it morphs into animation, and they go on an adventure with that animal. It's harmless. It's like the one thing we can show our kids, because you're just learning about animals. It's fun. They go on an adventure with an animal, and they come back out at the end of the episode, back to live action. The two real brothers are there, and they teach you a lesson about the animal. It's harmless, right? And we were just like, man, this would be incredible to have a show that's in this format, similar format. And lots of others have done it, Wishbone and Adventures in Odyssey. Like there's lots of different stories that have this similar format of going back in history. Superbook. There's lots of them, right? So we said, let's take this classic format and do it with the lives of Christian heroes, the saints. Like, there's so much about our history that we don't know. Where did the Bible come from? And how did that even get put together? And I've heard this Valentine's Day. What is that? Was there a guy Valentine? Oh, whoa.
We just had St. Patrick's last week.
There was a Patrick. Like, what was his story? Christmas. Who's that Nicholas guy? Like, what's the story there? So we have a show where we have two brothers who are live action. They walk in the footsteps. So we'll go to the location of these saints. A lot of them are in Italy. We'll go to the live action location of these saints. And for a minute or two, the brothers will walk in their footsteps. And then it morphs into an animated journey where you go witness one of the saints and what they're going through and why they're saints. And you come back out and you learn a nice lesson. And it's all kind of being led by this mentor figure whose name is Dex, played by Jonathan Rumi, Jesus and the Chosen. So it's me, who I'm one of the stars. It's my brother, who's one of the stars. And then we have Jonathan Rumi, who's like this mentor. And he sends us on these adventures. And we get to witness, so it's history, it's spiritual formation, because you're getting to learn that these saintly figures are really accessible. They're real people struggling with real things, going through real problems. They're not these distant beings that are made better than us or different than us. They're real people going through real problems. So we're actually in negotiations with a streamer right now to make this show at a very high quality bar, and that's our television show, right? So that's a show that has a clear audience, and it's a show that has potential merchandising, licensing. It's a show that I think could come into the home. I think in a way that Disney came into all of our homes, where you got the bedding, the pillows, the sheets, all that. I think it can come into the home, and it can invite the child's imagination to bring these people to life in their home, which is a healthy thing for kids. And of course, you get a virtue at the end, and you learn about vice and virtue and qualities that hopefully your kids will want to emulate about these various figures. So it's 10 episodes. We're in negotiation with a streamer right now to make it happen, so I can't say who it is, but it's going to be very exciting. It's going to be free to watch, and we hope everyone will watch it. And then on the other end of the equation, we have a big action movie that we developed called Quartermain and the Gates of Hell, which is the intellectual property is Alan Quartermain, the novels, which are public domain. It's public domain right now, so anyone can make something on it, which is great. But it was what was used to inspire Indiana Jones. So we kind of have our own take on it, where we take in the Bible. There's that phrase where Satan was cast from earth like a lightning bolt, or cast from heaven like a lightning bolt, and struck the earth. And there's a real rumored place, which is where he struck, and it's like hell on earth. Literally, it's like somewhere in Africa, and extreme. There's crazy tribes living around there, and the weather is nuts. And you basically have this kitted out Navy SEAL like hero who gets hired to go on an expedition through there. And it's it's Indiana Jones-ish, but with a totally different look and feel, as opposed to, dusty top hat and whip. You have more of a kitted out elite operator getting hired to put an expedition together to go through this hellish landscape. And he's not a believer. And along the way, it's this wonderful battle of faith versus reason that comes into play, and double crossing, and all the fun that you like from an action adventure genre, with this like loosely religious theme in the background, which I think what made something in Indiana Jones special. So we have everything in between. We just sold another show to Disney. We have lots of things in between there that we're working on, but we have a diversity.
So let's talk about that Quartermain for a second. 'Cause when I'm thinking Indiana Jones, I'm thinking $100 million movie.
Yeah.
Is this the kind of thing that you're going to put into production with the fund, or
that's a great question. So the fund is a certain size. So the fund is $25 million, which gives us enough leverage to achieve, that diversity, the scale of diversity that we're looking for. We'll be able to make enough investments to have the ones that hit, the ones that lose, the ones that hit, make up for all of it and then some. So we'll be able to achieve that, but we're not the ones writing the big checks for every single project. We want to create as much value as we possibly can with the amount of dollars that we have to leverage ourselves in a great position to profit handsomely. And the deals vary. If you were to look at it like an oil and gas deal, you can kind of speculatively purchase land and create some value there and then flip it, or you can drill a couple wells, start to get some luck, and then you can hand that off to a producer. There's many different ways to make money, just like there is in oil and gas. So on a deal like Quartermain, we spent the development risk. We took the early risk in creating the value in that property, and then we'll let someone come in and write that big check, and we get handsomely rewarded along that way for taking that early risk.
So
we get a carried interest in the deal. We get our money back in a return, a carried interest in the deal, and then there's additional fees that go along the way, and we're creating a franchise. So it's something that we'll be a part of in the long term. So it's not just one movie. If they make it and it hits, we could be doing this for 50 years. I mean,
and that process was actually going and developing the script. So you're
correct.
You're imagining it. You're going to a writer, an experienced writer. You have a finished product, and then you can go and start shopping that around to the studios.
And that creates leverage. And that's what you got to do in Hollywood. And a lot of people don't want to do that. They just want to pitch an idea. But the business is so hard these days that the more you can show up with, like one of our board advisors always says, they say don't bring a knife to a gunfight. We bring tanks. So we want to leave no room for error on who's winning this thing. So we try to load up the IP with as much value as possible, to where when we walk in there, it's irrefutable and irresistible. So we get a great writer, great script that's working, and then we try to package it with talent. So actors, producers, directors, that type of thing. So on Quartermain, we risked X amount of dollars. There's a capped upside, there's a carried interest, and it's something that could create long-term value if it turns into the franchise that we think it does. And then on something like the television series, that's something that we could have merchandising, licensing. That's a longer-term play, but something that could create big value because of the universe that a kid's Christian family show could establish.
Sure.
And with TV, you have library value. So if we get 10 episodes the first season and we do this for 4 or 5 years and we have 60, 70, 80 episodes by then, that creates a lot of value, because then you have a huge piece of content that's very licensable all over the world.
And so if you're going to, so you talk about the television series, you talk about developing scripts, developing ideas. You mentioned you just sold a show to Disney. Is that right?
Yeah.
Is that something you can talk about?
Depending on when this comes out, because we just finished legal on it, and they're going to make an announcement on it, but they haven't made an announcement
so
yet.
we won't talk about it on this podcast.
Yeah, sorry.
But
If this is like 3 weeks later, we'd do it. But
No
yeah,
worries.
we finished legal on it. Literally last week we signed the deal.
Now, if you decide that you're going to go ahead and take a film idea and put that into production, what is sort of the sweet spot in terms of the size of the films that you're able to create?
We were talking a little bit about this earlier, right? Like Hollywood has an economic problem right now because they spend so much on production, and there's not a ton of return by way of box office because of overspending. However, if you're responsible with your spending, the money's there. You have movies all the time making 100, 200, 300, 400 million dollars. The problem is the cost of making the movie was so big. And with a lot of the studio movies, there is a ton of fluff in the budgets. There's a lot of stuff that doesn't need to be there, that's there just for contingency or just for worst case scenario. You have these huge pieces of camera equipment that are just sitting there doing nothing for weeks, that are 50, 60, 70 grand a day, and there's several of them just sitting there doing nothing in case the director says, hey, I want that super techno crane, bring that in here. I'm glad it was sitting around for 5 weeks so I could use it one day. And those come with a crew of 7 people, and there's a lot of fluff. So I think there's not a problem with the amount of money coming into Hollywood of consumers. I think it's just a budgetary problem that we're running into. And I think there's a lot of technical advancements happening today that are bringing costs down. So that's actually really good. I think there's a very bright future by way of content creation, because Hollywood is realizing this, and they're figuring out how to make things more responsibly than they have in the past, because I think technology is helping expedite that.
There's technology, and there's also geographic diversification. So I had printed this out before the podcast, because this was Rob Lowe was talking to Adam Scott on his podcast, and he said that had they filmed Parks and Recreation today, they would have ended up filming it in Budapest. And he says, it's so weird how nothing shoots in Los Angeles. It's too expensive to shoot here. And then Rob Lowe says there are no tax credits. All those other places are offering 40%. And then on top of that, there's other stuff that they do. And then that's not even talking about the union stuff. That's just the tax economics of it all. So it's criminal what California and LA have let happen. It's criminal. Everybody should be fired. So this whole idea of tax credits, walk me through that. And how do you make a decision in terms of like where you're filming? And will you film everything in Texas going forward?
Well, I was just about to say, Texas has a massive, I think they just passed at least $100 million tax incentive. That's a big deal, because, again, Hollywood's kind of in turmoil, which I think is actually an opportunity, because if you're doing this in the right way, you can emerge from it a very strong, powerful force. But the tax incentives are a really big part of how you finance a piece of content. So let's say a movie costs $10. If you shoot it in a certain place, you're going to get $3 or $4 back just by shooting there, just by bringing business to their economy. That brings the capital stack way down. Instead of having a $10 movie, you have a $6 movie. And then there's other things on top of the $6 you can do to get that down even further. So if you're smart, you can really try to reduce as much equity that you need in a piece of content as much as humanly possible. Like for instance, which just makes your upside that much more if you're able to reduce, your
de-risks
exposure.
the project.
You de-risk the project. Like on our Halo Hero show, I won't use real numbers here. I'll just for confidentiality purposes, but let's just say it costs $5 to do the animation, right? Just the animated side of it is $5. Because of where we're going to shoot it, which is a foreign country where we're going to actually do the animation, which will be a foreign country, most likely Canada, actually, based on the animators we're getting bids from. We'll be able to get like $2.50 off that $5, close to that, depending on if we get a couple other cultural grants. But two off that $5, I mean, that's a big deal.
Huge discount.
That's a huge saving that we're getting right off the top on our piece of content. So now the overall value, our hurdle to profitability is that much less. So that really juices a project in a very big way. So for people like us who with $25 million fund, it's enough to get meaningfully involved, but it's not enough to be like a huge studio level who have billions of dollars, but it's enough to get meaningfully involved. We have to be really smart about that. We have to be really careful, very prudent over where we're shooting, because we want to bring down that risk as much as possible so we can try to achieve as much upside. And also get in at the lowest common denominator. Like, just what does it cost to make the thing right and do it right? But do that at the lowest cost as possible, so that way you can prove it out. Like, if Halo Hero Season 1 works, we did it at a really low cost. The future is very bright. There's a ton of profit in that potentially for us, and it achieves our mission most importantly. Like for us, we love that you invested through your foundation, because for us, there is a missional quality to this. This is more than just getting into the stock market, or there's other ways for more guaranteed returns, and anyone who tells you otherwise it's not true. This is Hollywood. But there's a mission here that's really important. So I love when some of the folks who have come in early into the fund have come in through their foundations. We've set up a mechanism to receive those kinds of dollars, because there's a missional component here, and we're not shying away from that. In fact, we're putting that forward. We're being very transparent about that. We want to make great stuff that has a great impact on the world.
It makes me think of the comment you made earlier about going to Italy and looking at all of the beautiful artwork and the Sistine Chapel and the Duomo and all of these incredible landmarks that have been handed down to us from ancestors from 5 centuries ago. And we talk a lot about wanting to leave your mark on this earth and leave your footprints behind. And what are we leaving behind us? My wife and I talk about that all the time. Certainly we're leaving behind a legacy in our children, but we want to hand something to them that is meaningful and want to feel like we have contributed positively to society at large. And I know others in the fund feel the same way. And very, very excited to be a part of it. If people are interested in being in the fund or working with you, is that open to the
Absolutely, yeah. No, we're actually early on in our life cycle in the fund. We, I want to say maybe 6 months now. We've officially formed. All the docs have been signed. We've taken in our first investments. So we're actually 6 months into what'll probably be another 6, 7, 8 months of raising. So there's definitely still room.
So where can people go to find out more about the fund?
Novopictures.com. Novo, Novo, not Nova. Novopictures.com. There's a little email thing there. You can just send us an email, and someone on our team will get back to you. But yes, we're looking for like-minded individuals who want to make high-quality content that can entertain and elevate with some of the best people in the business.
As we wrap this up, what is the future for you? So you're still in your 30s. We have the fund. There's a vision there. What does that vision look like?
Yeah, I mean, my hope is Novo will really become synonymous with, I think, how Disney started, and other big studios, the Amblins, the DreamWorkses of the world. That this will be a place where you'll know what you're going to get. You're going to be excited, and you'll want to bring the whole family to sit and watch a piece of content for us. And our dream, our hope is that this first fund goes well, and everyone is taken care of, and they want to roll forward, and they want to do it. They want to do it again and even bigger now. So I think we're really at an exciting inflection point, but the beginning of, yes, we've been doing it for 25 years and have made a lot of content. But we really are at the beginning. So I'm very excited to be here, and hopefully this thing will continue to snowball into something bigger.
Well, I'm rooting for you, brother. Thank you.
Man. Thank you, brother. Thank you. Y'all straight.